Welcome to the Fandom Podcast Network special presentation of Time Warp, where we celebrate our, a really fun year of movies, and we always like to hit on an anniversary as well. And we are celebrating the year of 1990, including all of the movies and pop culture surrounding it. And also, too, everything in 1990 is celebrating its 35th anniversary. So welcome to Time Warp 1990. On this episode, of course, we will cover the movies and pop culture released in February. This is, of course, Time Warp, the Fandom Flashback show, and this is the FPN, the Fandom Podcast Network. I'd like to welcome my co-host for Time Warp. With me is the queen of movie foo, Miss Lacey Adderhold. How are you?
Hello. Oh, I guess my stack's a little bit close. Gotta keep that. Okay,
we're Your good. Stack of physical media, which is not a problem.
Yes.
So yeah,
don't want to spoil anything for its time.
That's true. Back as always is the co-founder of the Fandom Podcast Network, my brother from another mother, Mr. Kyle Wagner. What's going on, sir?
I am ready for this podcast. I am bringing some hard to kill turtle power because I'm out for some revenge.
Well, one of those that you said is not part of this one, but yeah,
it's a time frame.
All right, guys. We of course are talking Time Warp 1990, the movies and also the TV shows. And recently on Time Warp here on the Fandom Podcast Network, we of course did the first month of 1990. That's January. We had movies like Tremors, Internal Affairs, Bride of Reanimator, Dark Angel. And previously, of course, we covered the year of 1984 last year because they were all celebrating their 40th anniversary. We also did a Time Warp for the NFL Raiders players who acted in movies and TV. We did a Buffy a little while ago TV series retrospective, but the 1984 was great. We had 12 months of awesome discussion with a lot of great movies. Make sure you guys go check that out. But we are talking about the movies of 1990. Now, before we head out, let's first of all take a step back in time to 1990. Let's fuel up that DeLorean with that flux capacitor, slingshot around the sun aboard a captured Klingon bird of prey, take a step into that police box or phone booth, step into that quantum leap accelerator, or my favorite, take a dip in that hot tub time machine as we travel back to 1990, where we're going to remind you what's happening in pop culture, sports, politics, television, and of course, the movies. All right, what happened in February of 1990? We got a lot of stuff to get to here, guys. Some of the world news that is definitely notable here. So February, smoking is banned on all cross-country flights in the United States. Now, what's funny is I remember when this was happening, guys, but like it seemed like forever though. You still saw like in the planes, you still saw like ashtrays and stuff like that. It still smelled like smoke. Remember that?
And I had a friend whose mother, because I was like 15 at the time, I was 16, I guess. And I had a friend whose mom was a flight attendant, and she was like, "Here, let me show you how to disconnect the thing so you can smoke in the bathroom." And I'm like, what?
That's punishable by death now, I think. So
like, yeah. It was like a federal. I was just like, wow.
February 11th, Nelson Mandela is released from Victor Verster prison near Cape Town, Africa, after 27 years behind bars. February 13th, German reunification and agreement is reached for a two-stage plan to reunite Germany. And this kept going on and on and on. February 27th, Exxon Valdez oil spill. Exxon and its shipping company are indicted on 5 criminal counts, Kyle. And then later on in Waterworld, it turned into the D's. It just haunted us forever, Kyle.
I think I still can't escape it. I really thought Waterworld sunk it, but it still floats around.
Yes, definitely. Next, we have 1990. Oh, yes, Lacey.
I got to see Nelson Mandela speak later that year at Georgia Tech, and he was fantastic. He was phenomenal.
Really? Yeah. Was he doing like a tour of like?
Yeah, he was doing like a college tour. I guess like a I don't want to say college tour. There's a bunch of different places, but a lot of them were colleges. And I had friends at Georgia Tech, and yeah.
Cool.
It was nice.
Really, that's really cool.
Yeah, really interesting.
Next, we have 1990 toys, tech, and products, guys, or as the Joker likes to say, where does he get all those wonderful toys? And the next set of toys that we had was the third series of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Playmates and Kroner weren't messing around with the blockbuster release of the first TMNT that year, and of course went balls deep in creating another line of figures for the holidays this year. The particular harvested a ridiculously extraordinary amount of turtle merch, including undercover Donatello, there along with Samurai Leo, Surfer Michelangelo, and Space Cadet Raphael, along with an abundance of vehicles and playsets that highlight the radical party wagon in particular. Kyle, there were some weird turtle figures coming out this year.
Yeah, all I know is Eastman and Laird were making bank.
Yeah, that's all that matters. Yeah,
you can also tell the time frame because if you look at the picture, if you're seeing the video, like they're all in like hyper color.
Yeah,
it's all like pinks and purples and teal and like bright oranges.
They're actually kind of starting to look like He-Man figures. That kind of
a little bit. Yeah,
kind of stance that they have, which I was never a fan of personally.
Just real quick, the reason why they're all these colors is this was about the time when they were really insistent on unrealistic looking toys, and like everything was coming out in these neon bright colors because of that.
Yeah, that's true. Next in tech that we have is Windows 3.0. Look at those fantastic 90s graphics right there. Woo!
I remember Brush. Wow.
I think there's some elderly people in Florida who are still trying to run Windows 3.0.
Wow.
I didn't. That looked like the same program I had, in the mid to late 90s when I got my first computer. But yeah, that's some good looking stuff right there, man. Wow. Windows 3.0 is the third major release by Microsoft Windows, launched in 1990. It is a graphic user interface, represents applications as clickable icons instead of the list of file names in its predecessors. Later updates expanded capabilities such as multimedia support for sound recording and playback, and the support for CD-ROM. This is funny. The support for Windows 3.0 ended on December 31st, 2001. I'm surprised it went on that long, because wasn't like 98 lasted like Windows 98 lasted like 10 or 12 years, Kyle.
Oh,
so people are still running it, I think.
Yeah, there's a time when Windows operating system actually like lasted those kind of times. Now it's like 10 is finally Windows 10 is finally getting phased out now. But yeah, Windows likes to keep Microsoft likes to keep those Windows operating systems running as long as they can until they force feed you to upgrade.
Next, we have for product, we have some food, and I vaguely remember these. These are the Dunkaroos. Dunkaroos are a snack food from Betty Crocker, first launched in 1990. It consists of a snack-sized package containing cookies and frosting. As the name implies, the cookies are meant to be dunked into the frosting before eating. Before eating, individual snack packages contain about 10 small cookies and 1 cubic inch of frosting. The cookies are made in a variety of shapes, including a circle with an uppercase D in the center. The only shape featured in the 2020 version, feet, the mascot in different poses, and a hot air balloon introduced 1990 first run. In 2020 was the second run, discontinued from the original run, was 2012. And it looks like you got a little kangaroo as the mascot. Do you guys remember these? Because I'm having trouble remembering these.
Oh,
Lacey, yeah?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. My sister was 5 years younger than me. So I had those were in like lunches and stuff. We also had the Teddy Grahams Dunkables or dippables. I don't think they were allowed to say Dunkables.
Okay.
But yeah.
Okay.
All I know is that most kids didn't eat the cookies. They just took the frosting to get that pure sugar rush.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds good. Next, we have some celebrities that were born in 1990. And in February, we had Davi Santos. We had Dominic Sherwood, English actor for Shadowhunters. We had Christian Mattson, Camille Winbush, actress for the Bernie Mac Show. We also had Jake Weary, actor for As the World Turns, Fred the Show, and Animal Kingdom. We also had Brett Deer, Canadian actor for Ravenswood and Jane the Virgin. Let me change the slide here, though. February 16th, I know who this is, The Weeknd singer. February 27th, we had Lindsay Morgan, actress for General Hospital and 100. And February 28th, we had Georgina Leonidas, English actress for Harry Potter. Like I said, I only know a few of those guys, so I don't know.
I only knew one.
Yeah, was that the weekend?
Yeah, and I couldn't even tell you what he looks like. I know it's a dude.
Yeah. All right, next, let's go ahead and get into some music. I'm waiting for this here. All right. Next, we have February 6th. We have Billy Idol. Now, pay attention to this, guys. This is fascinating. This is a what could have been. I don't know if this falls under sliding doors category or what. Billy Idol is involved in a serious motorcycle accident, resulting in several broken bones. Idol has been scheduled to have a major role in Oliver Stone's film The Doors, but due to his injuries, the roles are reduced to almost a bit part. The role of the T-1000 in Terminator 2 Judgment Day, originally intended for Idol, was recast entirely as a result of this accident. Can you guys see Billy Idol as the T-1000?
Totally different movie.
Yeah, like that's an interesting. Okay, let me put it this way. Back then, I don't know if I would have been able to imagine it. Now, I think that because I've seen him in things like The Wedding Singer and a couple of other things, I don't think it would have worked. I mean, he's good at playing Billy Idol.
Yeah.
I don't know how it would have been for him to play a character, especially one that's so subdued, just because he's such an over-the-top personality.
When he was recovering, he was in the middle of recording an album too, and when he finally finished, he was recuperating, and he did the one of his biggest hits, "The Cradle of Love," that song and that video that came out about the sexy next door young neighbor girl who's trying to flirt with a nerdy guy in the room, and you see Billy Idol kind of like in silhouette doing his thing. He's not moving a lot because he's still trying to overcome the injuries that he had in that motorcycle accident. When you watch that video, great song, by the way, but man, that would have been interesting.
He's doing a new tour coming up. I'm very excited. Matt Rife.
Yeah, I'm hoping to catch that tour because who is it? Joan Jett is going to be opening up for that. So I'm excited. Joan Jett and the Blackhearts.
Yeah.
Next, we have Bob Marley Day, February 6th. Bob Marley's birthday is a national holiday in Jamaica for the first time. And then also, this is interesting, February 14th, 50,000 fans watched the Rolling Stones play the first of 10 concerts at Tokyo's Korakuen Dome, the beginning of the Stones' first ever tour in Japan. The group was originally scheduled to perform there in 1973, but a drug conviction prevented Mick Jagger from obtaining a visa at the time. 10 concerts at the same location. Must have made a lot of money off that. And this guy's infamous here, February 16th. Ike Turner is sentenced to 4 years in prison for possession of cocaine. Next, we have, this made news, February 21st, the 32nd annual Grammy Awards are presented in Los Angeles, hosted by Gary Shandling. Bonnie Raitt's Nick of Time wins Album of the Year, while Bette Midler's cover of Wind Beneath My Wings wins both Record of the Year and Song of the Year. Milli Vanilli wins Best New Artist.
Yeah.
Now we know.
It's so crazy though, because now when people are doing these huge tours, they regularly will lip sync at least one to three songs during each night.
You know what's funny too? What's funny too is, and I've changed my mind on this over the years. There was a great documentary about them that came out last year or the year before about Milli Vanilli, and because only one of the guys is alive right now. I don't care who sang those songs. That is a bitchin' album. That album freaking rocks. And you know what? Even though they didn't sing a note on that song or on that album, to me, they're still part of the band. They're just like the hype guys. You know what? And people are still doing that crap now. There's still people on TikTok making millions off of, pretending to sing things. And it's like, you know what? Yeah, they got the brunt for it. But that album is a baller album.
Okay, so you're saying, because I honestly don't remember, so we're saying that they never sang it to begin with. They were lip syncing someone else's song.
And when they went on tour, they lip synced to a track. Yep.
Okay,
until
so that's different than people listening their voices.
A live show happened, and there's something went wrong with the playback, and they got called out for lip syncing. So yeah.
MTV just buried them.
Yeah.
It was
And
not.
also Arsenio Hall buried
Yeah.
him then
In
too.
Living
as well.
Color had some fun too.
Gotcha.
Definitely. Okay, next we have February 24th, the Byrds, Roger McGuinn, Chris Hillman, and David Crosby reunite for the first time in 25 years to perform at a Los Angeles tribute to Roy Orbison. The three are joined unexpectedly on stage by Bob Dylan, who sings Mr. Tambourine with the band.
Nice.
All right, continuing on to our Billboard Top 100 that we have going on here. We always like to pick a few at a time, about 8 songs from the top 10 as we slowly march down to number 1. Right now, we're going to talk about songs 92 through 85. See if you guys remember some of these. At 92, we have Forever by Kiss. 91, What It Takes by Aerosmith. 90, This One's for the Children by New Kids on the Block. 89, Make You Sweat by Keith Sweat. 88, When I'm Back on My Feet Again by Michael Bolton. 87, We Can't Go Wrong by the Covergirls. 86, It's Just the Way You Love Me, Paula Abdul. And 85, Come On and Get My Love by D-Mob with Kathy Dennis. I actually know most of these songs. I remember them. What about you, Lacey?
I know The Way That You Love Me. Just the way that, yeah, I know that one by Paul Abdul, and I'm struggling to get the melody, but I think I know the Kiss song because I love Kiss.
Forever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah.
Okay. What about you, Kyle?
Come on, Paula Abdul was ruling the music scene at this point. Everything she put out was a hit. I remember Keith Sweat, Make You Sweat was a big one. And come on, as much as we may not want to admit it, we were all tuning into some Michael Bolton at some point during that time.
I don't know, but you speak for yourself, bro, not me. I have no memory of that song.
I think his big one for me was when he did his version of Sitting on the Dock of the Bay.
Gotcha. Aerosmith was starting to take off now. They were also starting to do a lot of the ballads too. Forever, the Kiss. I think that video, if I remember correctly, had a lot of the other members of the band kind of reuniting with the newer members of the band. That Come and Get My Love by D-Mob and Kathy Dennis, that was actually a cool little dance song. I remember that one. That was a good one. I remember shaking my booty to that a couple times. So there you go. Let's talk some TV, guys. All right, we're going to talk about some notable events here. This is big, guys. February 17th, 1990, on NBC, Aerosmith appears in Wayne's World, a recurring sketch on Saturday Night Live. They perform the Wayne's World theme song. Kyle, this is big news. This is when Wayne's World and those guys in that era, if you ask me too, this era of Saturday Night Live was one of the best. A lot of people will say the original with Belushi and Aykroyd and all those guys are the best, but this was like the second coming of Saturday Night Live. Do you remember that, Kyle? Kyle, can't hear you. Having trouble hearing you there, buddy.
Uh-oh. Nope.
Yeah, Kyle, check your audio. Lacey, why don't you go ahead and answer? Do you remember SNL at this time?
I do. This is one of the few times where I would kind of chime in often, or tune in often. I loved Wayne's World, and of course, when was this before or after the first film? This is still before.
This is before. This is what was kind of setting it up because the Wayne's World skit was becoming so huge. And they were always talking about their favorite bands. And Aerosmith obviously probably performed this episode, and they actually got him into the skit as well.
Yeah, no, I dug this. And Dana Carvey, man, the church lady is still one of the funniest skits, hands down, in all of Saturday Night Live.
Satan!
Yep.
Yeah. Kyle, are you back with us yet? Audio? Nope, you're not. Go ahead and maybe check in and check out, but your audio's out. You're also
Hear me?
There we go.
Yep.
Keep talking, okay. Kyle. We can only hear you when you talk.
Yeah. Well, no, this. I'm with you, Kevin. This was probably the second coming of Saturday Night Live after the early '80s, like that. Maybe after Eddie Murphy left, and this was just talented cast ever for Saturday Night Live. In my opinion, Wayne's World is still one of the top 3 regular sketches in Saturday Night Live history. And this was so huge to have these guys on. They were the host, they were the band for that episode, and just how Mike Myers and Dana Carvey played Wayne and Garth in this skit was just amazing. And I really think this skit kind of laid the foundation and really boomed Wayne's World to where it ended up going.
Yeah, definitely. To two really good films too. So next we have some TV debuts for February. February 9th, The Brady's. Yes, those Brady's. They started a new show. Brady's, a sequel and continuation of the original sitcom The Brady Bunch, premieres on CBS. The Brady's involved more dramatic storytelling than which the viewers had seen in the previous Brady series, such as the previous Brady Bunch sequel series, 81's The Brady's Brides, airing on Friday nights. The Brady's would ultimately fail in the ratings against Full House and Family Matters as part of the TGIF lineup on ABC, and is canceled after 1 month. The last of 6 episodes produced would air in March of 1990. Yeah, they pretty much got almost everyone back here. I vaguely remember this, guys. Did you watch this? Anyone?
I remember it, yeah. And I remember that like right afterwards, I had seen, or right before actually, I got to see Barry Williams, who played Greg on at the Fox in The Music Man. And they made a joke about "Don't call me Greg" because he's got an assumed identity in the show.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so that was kind of fun.
Do you have a memory of this at all, Kyle?
I remember it coming out. If I remember correctly, it didn't last long either.
Yeah, it did not. It
Yeah.
did not. All right. Next, we have this show called The Nasty Boys that came on NBC. It was about a special undercover unit in North Las Vegas, operates independently, answering only to their lieutenant in chief. When apprehending suspects, they conceal their identities with ninja-like outfits created by David Black, Victor Davich, and Richard Weschler. Stars Benjamin Bratt, Nia Peoples, Cuba Gooding Jr., Don Franklin, Craig Hurley, and Dennis France. I have no memory of this show, but it was based apparently on a real police group that would do this stuff. Anybody have any memories of the show at all? Because I don't.
I don't remember the show, but I did try to Google it. It was a mistake. I'll just say that. Yeah.
Kyle.
Honestly, I have no memories of the show, and this is actually the first time I've really ever heard of it, and that's surprising considering when you look at who was in the cast of the show.
Yeah. Although I do know someone who does that for a living, and with like puts like has to put like the thing on his head to.
When you say, hold on, can you clarify what you mean by do this for a living? What do you mean?
What they do on the show, where they have to wear like ninja outfits to when they finally make the bust.
So you mean as police officers?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Next we have, and I hadn't heard of this show either. I guess I was more out and about and doing things during this time, but there's a TV series called A Family for Joe. After losing their parents, 4 siblings hire a vagabond to pose as their grandfather to avoid foster care. He embraces the role, imparting wisdom while their ex-air traffic controller neighbor lends support amidst the chaos. Stars Robert Mitchum, Jessica Player, David Lasher, Juliette Lewis, and Ben Savage. Guys, remember this one?
Nope, I don't.
Hold on. Kyle does it, but Lacey does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't remember it lasting very long, but I remember it kind of. I feel like it came right on the heels of Kidco, which was a Disney movie, whatever. But yeah, I absolutely remember this. It was definitely. We're just gonna go with of its time.
What was the Scott Wolf and Lacey Chabert series called again?
Party of 5.
It kind of reminds me a little bit of that because Party of 5, they were trying to not be taken away by social services. They were trying to keep the house, and I think there was some lie or something they were trying to, keep
the oldest
away.
brother was of age, and so he was trying to convince everyone that he was capable as an adult to take.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
4 siblings, I think. Yeah.
Just an interesting role for Robert Mitchum to take. I thought that was interesting. So, yeah. Okay, we've got some television that's ending this month in this year of 1990. And that was the reboot of Mission Impossible. I think they called it Mission Impossible 1988 because it only lasted 2 years. An elite covert operations unit carries a highly sensitive mission subject to official denial in the event of failure, death, or capture. Of course, Peter Graves was in that one as well. And then the series finale of Mama's Family that originally started in 83. is broadcast in first-run syndication, and in it, Naomi gives birth to a baby girl who is named Tiffany Thelma. Mama's family originated with Thelma Mama Harper and her younger sisters Fran living together in Mama's house, of course, starring Vicki Lawrence as well. So, you got a DVD. Is that to all of them, or like one or two seasons there?
The whole series.
Gotcha.
Mama's
Very
Family.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
I love that show. That show is funny. Love that.
So much fun. Oh my gosh. So
perfect. All right. Next, we have top-rated 1990 television programs, and there's 30 total, but we pick a couple at a time to showcase. And the ones that I'm going to showcase here are at number 27 and 28, and that is Growing Pains, which went from 1985 to 1992. It was at its peak right now. I think this is when they added Leonardo DiCaprio, the younger sister, and Alan Thicke, Joanna Kearns, Kirk Cameron, Tracy Gold, Jeremy Miller, Leonardo DiCaprio, Andrew Koenig, and Ashley Johnson. And then we had this series, which was created by Amy Heckerling, called Baby Talk. Follows the adventures of baby Mikey being raised by a single mother, Maggie, as she starts her life over in the city. Stars Tony Danza, Scott Baio, Mary Page Keller, Ryan Jessup, and Paul Jessup as the babies. I have no memory of Baby Talk, guys. Growing Pains, yes.
I actually remember Baby Talk because I remember the theme song for it, because it was one of those ones, if you heard it, it got stuck in your head for like a few days. And of course, Growing Pains was huge. I mean, we're talking DiCaprio. About this time, we're talking the DiCaprio years. Growing Pains.
Dude, this is not a good future for those two shows. Being as Scott Baio is dealing with some underage stuff, and Kirk Cameron is anti all of the people.
Yeah. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get in some movies. This is the Fandom Podcast Network, and we're discussing the movies of 1990. But first things we like to do is give you a little bit of celebrity debuts during 1990. We share a few at a time. We got Christina Ricci. She made her debut in Mermaids. Rob Schneider made his debut in Martians Go Home. And Nick Searcy in Days of Thunder. Those we'll get to shortly. But right now we're talking about the movies of February of 1990. And we got some interesting ones here, guys. And we're going to start off with the Queen of Kung Fu, I guess you could sort of say. We have China O'Brien. Came out February 2nd. And, of course, stars Cynthia Rothrock, a policewoman expert and instructor in martial arts, leaves the city to stay with her dad, sheriff in a small town with peace and quiet, or so she thinks. She gets plenty of opportunities to show her martial arts skills. Also co-stars Richard Norton and Keith Cook. Kyle, do you want to hit us up with some trivia, please?
I can do that. The scene in which Cynthia Rothrock rides a car down the street to promote her character's run for sheriff was filmed during an actual parade in Utah. The spectators, organizers, and press were not alerted to this, and the local radio station reported her fictional run for sheriff as fact. She'd have been a kick-ass sheriff, I'm just saying. It was shot back-to-back with China O'Brien, too, because that happened a lot even in the 90s. And director Robert Klaus also directed the famous Bruce Lee film Enter the Dragon.
Yeah, it's mentioned, Kyle, that shot back-to-back China O'Brien, too. Now, Lacey, what are you holding up right there?
Okay, this is the DVD, well, rather, this is the Blu-ray 4K combo pack for China O'Brien 1 and 2. It's got 2 4Ks and 2 Blu-rays in it, and believe it or not, both of these movies have commentaries.
Nice.
Interesting to listen to. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say the commentaries are more interesting than the movies themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. This is definitely it's an oeuvre, right? It's a genre. If you love it, you love it. If you don't, you don't.
I have the DVD version here. It's Hong Kong Boulevard DVD, China O'Brien and China O'Brien 2.
Nice.
We'll be talking about 2 a little bit later on, but yeah. Yep. You know, she has done some kung fu stuff and karate work in other like China films in China. I don't know if that reason why her name's China O'Brien, but she actually did a martial arts movie with Michelle Yeoh several years before. She started getting her work there and getting a lot of action. Then she started kind of coming to the States and doing some action films here. Kyle, your thoughts on China O'Brien? Did you ever see it?
Yeah, it's a fun movie. Cynthia Rothrock was a little before her time. I think if she would have hit in the 2000s or even 2010s, she'd be an all-out action hero right now. And I will say this, it is an absolute crime that she has not been in an Expendables film.
I know, right?
Yeah,
totally. Lacey, your thoughts on China O'Brien?
I would like to say that the artwork on these these discs is fantastic.
Nice.
Yeah, right. The movies are fun. They're not. I mean, we're not talking about high art. We're not talking about like anybody trying to make any Oscar-worthy performances or anything. This was a fun, like, kick-ass take names movie. It was enjoyable. I think that the commentaries were a little bit more interesting. Just if you want to hear like behind the scenes stuff, yeah.
Gotcha. I was a fan of these. I mean, yeah, they're not great, but there's something about Cynthia Rothrock, and I follow her on Instagram and Facebook, and she's great with her fans, and she's still keeping busy. My DVD combo pack is not as cool as yours, though, Lacey. I just got one disc right there.
Gotcha.
But yeah. So I think this is the Australian version I picked up while I was over there. But I've seen her other films, and she's just fun to watch. I honestly think her Chinese films are a little bit better. Kyle.
The one thing with her, too, is she's legit. She is a legit martial artist. She's a legit badass in real life. And I think that's what makes her movies that much better, is because that it's not some actress trying to be badass, which happened a lot early in the 90s. This is somebody who was a legit badass.
Yeah.
And I don't think she's actually a good actress, right? It just seemed like they were very low budget films because they were relying heavily on the martial arts. And so it felt like they did a casting call with like all their buddies from college or something. And not a lot of them are actors. I mean, I like 2 or 3 will be, but not the rest.
Richard Norton is accomplished, and he's been in a lot of action films. I like seeing him in this as well, but yeah, it was definitely low budget. Next, we have a movie called Flashback, made about $6.5 million, kind of like an action comedy. 1989, clean cut. By the way, it's dating itself already. In 1989, a clean cut FBI man, John Bruckner, is detailed to escort heavily bearded Huey Walker back to jail for offenses dating back to his days as a celebrated hippie radical. After Walker dupes Buckner on the train, he falls into the hands of a couple of well-meaning refugees from the 60s. The two men, with apparently nothing in common, find themselves on the run together. But appearances can be deceptive. Of course, stars Dennis Hopper, Kiefer Sutherland, Carol Kane, and Paul Dooley. Kyle, hit us up with some trivia, please.
Yeah, Kiefer Sutherland and Dennis Hopper later reunited in the first season of 24, where Sutherland once again played a federal agent, turning to Hopper's veteran criminal for help. Impressed with David Lowery's spec script, Paramount hired him to help write the screenplay for Star Trek V: The Final Frontier. Flashback was Lowery's first screenplay outside of the sci-fi genre, the first being Dreamscape back in 1984. I think we covered that on a Time Warp.
We did, yeah.
And of course, the song Born to Be Wild by Steppenwolf was heard on the soundtrack, which is an obvious reference to Easy Rider, the infamous 1969 film directed by and starring Dennis Hopper.
What's interesting, when I was trying to find this film, I was trying to find it for free, but I know, Lacey, you also have the Blu-ray there. I wasn't going to get it, but I ended up getting it because I found a deal with some other stuff and I got it. And it's okay. It's kind of fun. It's not great though, but I tell you right now though, I loved Carol Kane in this.
Yes.
I thought, because she's like the hippie refugee that they're referring to in the the small thing. She was great. I love Carol Kane in anything, actually. And then there's like a corrupt cop that tries to kill them and stuff, and then there's a lot of shenanigans that happen, and then there's like kind of a role reversal where Dennis Hopper takes the identity of Kiefer Sutherland's role and stuff. It was fun. I don't know if I'm going to hold on to the Blu-ray. What about you, Lacey? You holding on to your Blu-ray?
Yeah, this is part of my Kiefer Sutherland collection. I've got everything Kiefer Sutherland's ever done.
Okay.
The only thing I think I don't have is his country album. But yeah, I love Kiefer Sutherland. I love, honestly, all of the Sutherlands between Kiefer and Rossif and Donald. I kind of have all of their stuffs.
What did you think, Kyle?
Oh, sorry.
I've seen this. It was not one for me that I would buy. It's all right, but it wasn't anything that just really stood out with me. I'm kind of a mixed bag when it comes to Dennis Hopper. I either tend to really like what he does, or he does nothing for me. And he really didn't do much for me in this. And I'm like Lacey. I love Kiefer, and I'll give anything he's in a shot. But it wasn't a bad film. It just wasn't something that I was like, oh yeah, that was something that I'm going to revisit.
Yeah.
And it's funny, 'cause I kind of have a different view of Dennis Hopper. I did a movie with David Carradine, and I was one of the few people. I had headphones, right? So between takes, I would get to hear all the stories that only like 3 or 4 people got to hear. And so
Hold on. I'm having a flashback to oh God, what movie was it where she accidentally hears Notting Hill, where she's on set, she accidentally hears some stuff. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I was a script supervisor on a David Carradine film, and so basically I had headphones, and the director had headphones, and then the 2 sound guys. So the 4 of us were the only people who could hear the actual conversations between takes. And he would tell like all kinds of crazy. I mean, he had stories from.
I bet he does.
And all these folks, and so now I anytime I see Dennis Hopper, I'm like,
that's awesome.
I know some of that. I know funny stories.
All right. The next one we got here is an interesting one, and I want to kind of dive into this one here, guys. This is Heart Condition, a comedy. Lacey, you're holding up the DVD. God, I could not find it. Good for you. I'm glad you have it. Made a little over $4 million, and it stars Bob Hoskins and Denzel Washington. A racist cop receives a heart transplant from a black lawyer he hates, who returns as a ghost to ask the cop to help him take down the men who murdered him. Now, Kyle, give us some trivia on this, because there's something interesting about this film I want to mention.
Yeah, there's a few interesting things on this film, but talk about Oscar politics. Was originally scheduled for a fall 1989 release, but when Sony Pictures announced that Glory was to be released in selected cities that December in hopes of getting Denzel Washington an Oscar nomination for his performance in that movie, which he did win Best Supporting Actor for, New Line Cinema delayed the release to early February as they didn't want both films to be released so close to and compete with one another. Glory went into wide release in February 1990, but by the time it expanded, this movie had come out and left cinemas due to poor box office results and critical reviews. This motion picture has often been described as Ghost 1990 meets The Odd Couple from 1968. And this movie was first released in the same 1990 year as The Poltergeist Pix, Ghost, and Ghost Dad. All 3 films feature an African-American cast member in a key starring role.
Okay, so what's interesting about this movie is this came out before Ghost, but it's a similar plot about how someone dies and then trying to get the person that's still alive to find their murderer. Okay. The problem with this movie is the poster. It totally looks like it's a comedy. And in my opinion, this movie is not a comedy. There is some funny moments in it, but it is a straight up drama / action film. It's in a way, it's kind of endearing because Bob Hoskins, who's this kind of racist cop, doesn't want to be where he is. He has a heart attack, and of course, he gets the heart from the recently deceased Denzel Washington character, who is going through some crap, and he gets killed. And it's kind of tied into some, I think there's some cops that are dirty and stuff like that. But in the end, he kind of makes a turn. That's the Bob Hoskins character. He kind of starting to learn from his ways. And I really felt like this poster is totally misleading the film. And did Ghost rip it off? I'm just saying. I actually really enjoyed this film. Lacey, you have Kyle, you want to jump in real quick?
Yeah, there's just a couple things I want to say, kind of to piggyback what you just said. If you go back and watch the trailers for this film, they play this film up as a comedy. They focus on more of the funny aspects between Bob Hoskins and Denzel Washington. And there's something else to remember at this time. Bob Hoskins was probably the bigger, more known name at this point than Denzel Washington.
It's true.
Bob Hoskins is coming off being Roger Rabbit and everybody loving him for Roger Rabbit. He was huge. Denzel was up and coming, but he was not Denzel yet. And even with the Glory thing going on and stuff like that, he wasn't there yet. And I'm with you. I think this is actually a very good movie, but I really think the reason why this movie failed is because it totally misadvertised itself with the poster and with the marketing and with the trailers.
Yeah. Lacey, what about you?
I was just looking to see when St. Elsewhere was on. Yeah, so he was on St. Elsewhere for like several years. So he was kind of he was a TV star at that time, not a movie star. And I think Denzel. So I think Glory was supposed to be his big shot, like to just sort of transition into movies. Because remember, back then you were one or the other. You didn't switch until Denzel switched after St. Elsewhere, and Clooney made the transition after ER. And then it was kind of like you kind of go both ways and everybody's happy and nobody cares about which one's which. I will say the one thing that we haven't mentioned about this movie is that Chloe Webb plays the prostitute so basically Denzel was her pimp and also took part in, I don't know, they slept together. I couldn't figure out a polite way. And then apparently she was also having sex with Bob Hoskins' character. So the whole idea is that both of these men had feelings for the same person. So it's kind of like a weird love triangle. And then, there's an interesting little caveat at the end where you find out that she had Denzel Washington's baby and that's why she's been in hiding and all this kind of stuff. And so it's kind of a big deal when this, I'm going to go with formerly racist cop married a white woman with a half black child. Like there was a statement that was made with this movie. Because remember, 1990, there was still when did Jungle Fever come out? Remember, like that was 1999 or something. So there was still some very like people still looked very down on interracial couples.
This movie definitely felt 80s to me, but that's not a bad thing. And I actually liked it. Was a lot of the scenes were very cool watching Denzel follow him around, and he's getting annoyed by it, but he was able to help him like in some of the shootout scene towards the end, give him a heads up, and he was able to like touch Bob Hoskins, but like not touch or move anything else, which I thought was kind of interesting. But this, I was trying to find it. I found it streaming somewhere. I can't remember now, but I did find it streaming for free, and I actually did enjoy it. Did you enjoy it, Lacey?
Yeah, I mean, it was good. It does have some language that I disapprove of, but I mean, again, at the time and the message that the movie was sending, I feel like it was appropriate for the message of him figuring out his ways were incorrect.
Gotcha. Kyle, do you remember this movie much?
Yeah, I mean, it's again something that I enjoyed. I've come across it on cable a few times and picked it up when I watched it. Hopkins and Denzel had pretty damn good chemistry in this movie.
They did, yeah,
and they worked it. There are things though in this movie that would never fly if they tried to do them today. And honestly, I think in a way that's a kind of a shame, because I think when you get to the end of this movie, there is a strong message of change in this movie, and that people can grow and change.
Exactly.
But, yeah, I think this is one of those movies that it hit at a weird time. Everything with going on with Denzel at the time, it just kind of got a little bit lost in the ether.
Lacey, where did you get your DVD from?
I've had it for a while. This was not one that I bought recently. I don't know.
I'll have to look it up, because I actually wouldn't mind owning this. It
doesn't have any stickers. I'll say that. So it's not going to be like it's not like an old Blockbuster or anything. I think this was a. So
I'm gonna keep my eyes open for that one, because I actually wouldn't mind having this. This is a good buddy cop film, and they did it for Ghost. I'm gonna say so. Yeah. All right. Next we have is Hard to Kill, made over $47 million. Action here, of course, starring Steven Seagal, Kelly LeBrock, and William Sadler. Targeted by the mob and its political supporters, hired assassins leave LAPD detective Mason Storm for dead. 7 years later, he recovers from a deep coma, demanding justice and the opportunity to get even. Kyle, please give us some trivia here.
I can do that. I'm having a little camera difficulty here, so
you want me to read them then? I got it for you.
No, I got it. I'm there. So, Steven Seagal and Kelly LeBrock were married at the time this movie was made. Kelly LeBrock had pretty much retired from acting at the time this movie was made, and only did it as a favor to her husband. In retrospect, she calls the movie hard to watch or hard to believe. Warner Brothers demanded the movie be heavily cut and re-edited down to a 90-minute runtime in order to be more straightforward, fast-paced, and to have more theatrical screenings. Some scenes were cut while others, including parts of the plot, were deleted, which is why the movie suffers from bad editing at times. You could say that.
I remember being a little disappointed with this being the follow-up to Above the Law. I didn't think it was great. Kelly LeBrock, of course, looked great. But I just remember, I think it had one of the best Steven Seagal lines when he kills one of the bad guys. He says, F you and die. I thought that was a pretty good. William Sadler plays the corrupt politician. He's pretty good villain in this. He's kind of on a villain mode here. Of course, he was one of the lead villain in Die Hard 2 as well. But I've got the regular DVD here with that cardboard snap case that we all hate. But what's funny is I'm actually going to retire this one, Lacey, because I have a regular DVD case that has Above the Law and Hard to Kill on it, and I'm just going to keep that one.
Nice.
What about you? What about you? What are your thoughts on this, Lacey? This movie?
This is one of those DVDs where the special features include remastered soundtrack, interactive menus, language, and subtitles. I love it.
Yeah, those are not special features, guys.
Yeah. I will say, this is I don't disagree with Kelly LeBrock and her statement about the film. I think that her character was, it was so poorly written. Like the weird joke with the cat where she has a kitten in the hospital and she's makes a pussy joke about, and then she holds the cat and you're like, really? Who wrote who wrote this?
Because that was funny at the time.
But it was and then she just happens to know a guy who happens to have a horse ranch who she happens to be. There was a lot of happenstance in this movie and none of it made sense. So
I just want to say Mason Storm, Steven Seagal's fake beard was just horrible.
Oh my gosh, there was so much. All of his clothing. We could do just a Steven Seagal retrospective on just his outfits from the 5 main films that he did in the 90s. Yeah.
Kyle, your thoughts on Hard to Kill?
When you look back at this movie now, we should have all went, the warning signs were there. This is the one of the Seagal bunch that what I call the apex of Seagal, where you go back and you watch it now, and obviously it's horribly edited. It's got issues, but we should have seen the early warning signs that Seagal was not quite on the same realm of existence as the rest of us.
This is true. True.
We find out things after the fact with Kelly LeBrock and some of the things that he actually put her through during the filming of this movie. This is not, honestly, for me, the most 2 most revisitable Steven Seagal films where he's the lead in it are still Marked for Death and Under Siege. And Under Siege being, I think, my favorite Seagal film.
Yeah, Out for Justice. I like that one too, because I like William Forsythe as a villain in that. But yeah, my favorites are, and we'll be talking about Marked for Death later on. And what's really interesting, Kyle, is I was listening to, I think they were talking about Hard to Kill on the rewatch or the rewatchables, and something came up about how Steven Seagal, it's something that he demands that he does not get hit or injured by the people that he's fighting. He's the one that always makes the connections. He's the one that always is going to kick ass. But I think Marked for Death is the one time that doesn't happen because of who's running the show there. We'll talk about that later, but I thought that was interesting. All right. The next movie is another one that kind of surprised me, guys. This is a movie called Loose Cannons, made over about $4.5 million. Looks like Lacey's got the DVD there. Very cool. Nice. I found it streaming for free. I ended up watching it. It's comedy. Gene Hackman and Dan Aykroyd. The poster says, Detective Max Stern is facing the greatest challenge of his career. His new partner, Loose Cannons, an unconventional cop who doesn't take any bull, is paired up with an amazing detective to capture some powerful criminals. But the cop soon realizes that the book partner has a split personality disorder. Directed by Bob Clark, of course, stars Gene Hackman, Dan Aykroyd, Dom DeLuise, Ronnie Cox, and Nancy Travis. Kyle, please give us some trivia on Loose Cannons.
Yeah, this one's kind of interesting. So in May of 2013, an employee at the Calgary, Alberta landfill discovered some film negatives in the mounds of trash. He looked closer and found images of a man kneeling over a gruesome murder victim. Thinking it could be evidence of a crime, he submitted the negatives to the Calgary Police Services. After a short investigation, they recognized Dan Aykroyd and contacted his agent for information, finally concluding that was simply a discarded negative of Loose Cannons. The investigation was immediately closed and everyone had a good laugh. Aykroyd jokingly told TMZ the movie should have been left in the landfill where it belongs.
I love that. I love that bit of trivia. That is fantastic.
And to continue, actor and co-star Dan Aykroyd said of this movie, "This is the wildest role I've ever had. Most people think I've played a really crazy person before, but in The Couch Trip, which came out in 1988, I was portraying a guy who's pretending to be crazy. I actually played a guy who is technically a multiple personality."
I actually enjoyed this movie. It falls under action comedy as well. I thought the chemistry between Hackman and Aykroyd was good. And sometimes Aykroyd's multiple personality thing came in handy. And I thought it was weird that Gene Hackman was living out of his car, as a police officer. I thought that was kind of funny. But I thought it was kind of interesting. And especially the one scene I really liked was when you have the opening shootout on the boat in the little harbor dock, and Dan Aykroyd uses his like deductive skills to say exactly what happened and how it happened, and that was a pretty cool thing and how it played out. Lacey, you own a copy. Where did you get your DVD?
Again, this is a really old one. Okay. The special feature is interactive menus and widescreen presentation.
Okay. Well, your thoughts on Loose Cannon?
It's a cool flick. It's kind of, I'm a Dan Aykroyd completist. I love Dan Aykroyd. He's hilarious and awesome in all things. For me, I did love the opening scene where he kind of has that Sherlock kind of mentality, right?
Yeah.
But I think for me, it's the first scene, the bar scene where they get into trouble the first time, because basically his schizophrenia is sparked by violence, because he's like this nebbish kind of quiet, calm, unassuming, observant character. But anytime there's a possibility of any sort of danger, he relies on one of his other personalities to come out. And I mean, it's probably not, you probably couldn't make it today. I mean, this would be definitely like not okay for like mental health rules and regulations as far as like making comedy or whatever. But it is definitely of its time, and it was really funny just to see the way Aykroyd portrayed these characters. And I will say that he used the different personalities very well to navigate all of the violence. So I mean, maybe it's a positive look at, I don't know, but it's a funny watch if you don't have any issues with that.
Yeah. Kyle, have you seen Loose Cannons?
I have seen Loose Cannons. This was another one where you look at the cast and think this should be better than what I think it was. And Aykroyd is great. Aykroyd is always great when he lets loose. It's just, to me, it was a weird pairing of him and Gene Hackman. And again, this was one of those movies, much like Heart Condition, when it came out, it kind of hit for a brief time and then just fell off the ether. And I think this is kind of, Kevin, one of the aspects of that rolls over from the 80s is February is a bad month to release movies at this time still. Usually movies that are coming out here are movies that the studio is not fully behind. They
call it Dumpuary for a reason.
Yeah. And I think this was definitely one of those cases.
Well, what's interesting about Loose Cannons and Heart Condition is I hadn't heard any of these films until I was doing the research for 1990. I'm like, I don't remember these movies at all. I, of course, didn't have HBO at the time, so I wasn't like seeing all these if they were being repeated. But I actually was pleasantly surprised by that one. So, all right, next we have a comedy called Madhouse, a black comedy made a little over $20 million in its theatrical run. The poster says, "The bad news is that you have house guests. There's no good news. Luxurious villa." The luxurious villa of yuppie couple Mark and Jesse Bannister is overrun by loads of uninvited guests and turn the house upside down and nearly destroys it. Stars Richard Alexander, Kirstie Alley, John Larroquette, Alison LaPlaca, and Dennis Miller. Kyle, give us some trivia on Madhouse.
John Larroquette was approached for this film while working on the 6th season of Night Court, but the show's executive producer would not allow Larroquette time off to make the film. Because of delays in the film, Larroquette was approached again during the 7th season of Night Court. This time, the show's producer and the film's producers worked out a schedule that would allow Larroquette to work on both projects simultaneously. Monday to Thursdays, Larroquette would rehearse for the series during the day and work on the film at night. On Friday nights, the series would tape their episodes. As soon as taping was finished, he would go to the film set and work all weekend. And although it's a comedy, the movie makes reference to 2 horror movies, with a cat coming back to life scene from Pet Cemetery, and also dead zombies wanting to stay at their house dream sequence from Night of the Living Dead.
Supposedly the cat in this movie died a few times and came back, so that was interesting.
It was one of the running jokes in the film. And then Kirstie Alley and John Larroquette played alien characters in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, and Star Trek III, The Search for Spock, respectively.
Larroquette played a Klingon. Yeah, I remember that. So yeah. You have this movie on Blu-ray. Interesting.
I do. This is recent.
Okay.
This is an olive film, so it's within the last 10 years, but it's between 5 and 10 years ago, I think.
Okay.
Because olive films is no longer around. But yeah, this is a little boutique effort.
Your thought on Madhouse, the film. What do you think?
It's super cute. It's super fun. It's ridiculous. Like, it's way over the top. It's super silly. It makes total sense. Basically, the cat is Rasputin in cat form.
Yeah.
I mean, they electrocute it, they run it over, they drown it. Like, it's got bad luck, and like by the end, it's like somebody makes a comment that maybe it's got one life left.
Yeah.
There's like drug dealers and crazy weird plots, and she's a news anchor, and so she has a meltdown on national TV when she sees footage of her husband running from the police. She realizes that that's her house that's on fire. It's great. It's fun.
I didn't enjoy it as much as you. I thought it was okay. I really like Alison LaPlaca. I think she's a really underrated actress. Everything I see her in, I like her. But I was just kind of like, I was a little meh about it. I think the best thing about it was the cat coming back. I was like, yes, you can kill the cat. Kyle, do you remember Madhouse?
I remember Madhouse. Anything John Larroquette does, I'm going to check out. I am a huge Larroquette fan. And you're pretty much at Larroquette and Kirstie Alley owning TV at this point.
Right?
Yeah.
Kirstie Alley was doing Cheers. Larroquette was doing Night Court. You had Dennis Miller, who was definitely on the rise at this point as well. It's a great cast. It's one of those movies where we've been there, done that, though. When I think of movies like this in neighborhoods and stuff like that, I always go back to Tom Hanks and The Burbs and things like that. But I think
the Burbs did it better when it comes to all kind of crap happening to the house. The money pit as well. Yeah. So, yeah.
I think this is definitely one of those films that if it comes out in the 80s, it's a much bigger hit than what it was when it comes out in 1990.
Yeah. All right, next one we got here is an interesting one, and I'm a first-time watcher of this. And this is Nightbreed, a horror movie that made a little over $8 million in its original theatrical run. A troubled young man is drawn to a mythical place called Midian, where a variety of friendly monsters are hiding from humanity. A community of mutant outcasts of varying types and abilities attempts to escape the attention of a psychotic serial killer and redneck vigilantes with the help of a brooding young man who discovers him, based on the novel Cabal by Clive Barker, who also directed this. Stars Craig Sheffer, David Cronenberg, and Bobby Doug Bradley, and Hugh Quarshie. Kyle, give us some trivia on Nightbreed.
Sure. Though promised a cleaned up version of the extended VHS work print dubbed the Cabal Cut in July of 2014, fans were delighted when Scream Factory announced that the original film was found and restored at 4K and recut under Clive Barker's supervision, ending a 24-year-long plea for the director's cut to be released in 2 packages in October 2014. Clive Barker has gone on record as saying that he felt that distributor Fox and financiers Morgan Cree Productions never understood the film and simply cut the story to pieces so it would fit what their idea of the picture should have been. 20th Century Fox drastically cut this film at the last minute prior to its theatrical release, omitting most of the graphic violence and completely deleting Roxy singer Susie Quarto's role from the final print and misleadingly advertised it as just another standard slasher feature. And finally, during the opening credits sequence, the camera pans over a wall with art by Ralph McQuarrie. According to the director's cut video commentary, this wall was broken into pieces when the sets were demolished, which completely upset Clive Barker, who would have loved to have taken the wall segments home and preserve them.
Original art by Ralph McQuarrie being destroyed? Jeez, that pissed me off.
I have thoughts on this movie.
Well, let me just, before you say that, Kyle, real quick, I'm going to let you lead off, but I just want to mention what I have here. I have the Nightbreed director's cut by Shout Factory. I love it because it has a reversible art. I love when these Blu-rays have the reversible art. You have the original DVD. Is that
Yes.
it there, Lacey? Yeah. I actually like that cover better, so I have this as part of my Blu-ray. But Kyle, go ahead and take it away. You got thoughts.
So, in my opinion, next to Stephen King, Clive Barker has had his works more raped and destroyed by Hollywood than any other author out there. This movie, if it comes out 10 years ago, this movie is a huge hit with because Clive Barker would have had much more control over it. It would have been much more the movie he wanted based off the story he wanted. And with the comic mentality and fandom mentality that we have now, this movie would have made buku bucks. Yeah. And much like a lot of Stephen King stuff, it was so bastardized when this first came out, and it was so marketed completely what it wasn't, that people were just confused and angry by it because they knew what Clive Barker's original vision was. I give so much credit to Shout Factory for what they did in getting this restored and working with Clive Barker to get this made correctly. But this is, again, one of those things where in the 90s, people didn't understand this stuff compared to how they understand it today. This could have been a huge IP that could have spun out several movies with these characters.
You know, it's interesting. I was pleasantly surprised by this movie. I'd heard of this film. I'd seen it on VHS, but, it's, obviously it does fall under horror. And I knew Clive Barker from the Hellraiser series. That was where I first learned about him. I'm a fan of the first 3 films, but I'd never seen this film. And I know they recently released it on Blu-ray and 4K. And thank you for Shout Factory for doing so. But I don't really understand everything that went on because I've only watched it once when I was getting ready for this podcast. But I got to tell you, the reason why I was distracted while watching this film was all of the great characters and makeup and physical, effects that they did with this. It was like this wonderful underworld of these weird creatures, and then there's someone trying to kill them. And by the way, when you watch the opening of this DVD or this Blu-ray, there is a interview with the director and Clive Barker talking about the restoration of it. And there's like an extra half hour added to this because I think they cut it so bad. I think they had to go to like some VHS tapes too or something, and then restore them and clean them up. But this movie is 120 minutes when normally I think it was like an hour and a half, maybe.
Yeah,
Lacey, what's that?
It was butchered.
Yeah. Lacey, your thoughts on Nightbreed?
Mine was an hour and 42 minutes. Just FYI.
Okay, so about maybe 20 minutes for
24 minutes, I think is what it said in the thing.
Okay.
I agree with the IMDb thing, with the exception of the fact that they're not friendly monsters. At first, when he tries to escape and go down to they're wanting to eat him and kill him, and it's a whole situation. They become friendly once they realize that he's part of their, situation. This has a feel to me like it had that same feel as Near Dark.
Yeah.
It has that kind of like gritty underbelly kind of thing where, they're just trying to be, right? They're just trying to be, and maybe people get in their way, and so they have to make the murder happen.
Right.
But it was good. I enjoyed it. I think because I haven't seen the director's cut. I've seen this one several times. And I don't know. Because it says that most of the gore was pulled out, which I don't think would have changed it for me. I don't like the gore. So this, I think, I think this is the best version.
So you enjoyed that version that you have then?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, there's definitely some more bloody scenes in it. I could tell that I don't know if they were in it originally because I've only seen the new director's cut here, but I enjoyed it. I liked it. I want to go back and rewatch this now that I've seen it because I wasn't sure what to think of it. But yeah, it was interesting that this movie was.
It's interesting though. A lot of people were confused at the time, just kind of like with The Spirit, with what's his name directing The Spirit. And when Clive Barker said he was going to direct this movie, everybody was like, "Oh God, you're not a director, like you're a writer." No, crossing genres, this is gonna be crazy. But I think he did.
All right, let's go ahead and hit the next one here, guys. This is Revenge, suspense thriller in a theatrical run, made about $15.5 million, starring Kevin Costner. Directed by Tony Scott, also co-starring Anthony Quinn and Madeline Stowe. A retired U.S. Navy pilot comes to Mexico where he falls in love with the wife of a powerful businessman. The consequences will be cruel and unforeseen. Kyle, give us some trivia on Revenge.
Okay, this first one there's going to be conversation about because the sex scene between Kevin Costner and Madeline Stowe were not rehearsed or choreographed in any way before shooting. Tony Scott simply set up 3 cameras and allowed the actors to find their way into the scenes. Everything seen during the sex scenes was improvised by the actors themselves. When Costner viewed the director's cut of the movie in 2007, he said of these scenes, "Boy, we really got into it, didn't we?" Was originally going to be directed by John Huston, who did not want Kevin Costner as the lead. But after Costner became a success with The Untouchables and Bull Durham, he was powerful enough to produce it himself. And before Tony Scott came on board as director, Costner was wanting to make the film as his directorial debut, but producer Ray Stark talked him out of it as he didn't feel Costner was ready to helm a project just yet.
Well, Kyle, you mentioned you want to talk about the first thing. I want you to get into your thoughts on Revenge.
There is a very underground Kevin Costner movement that feels this is his best film, and are huge fans of this film. The chemistry between Madeline Stowe and Kevin Costner was off the charts, to the point there are people to this day who think they actually had sex in some of those.
Lacey and I are holding up our Blu-rays, same copies there. Revenge. It is the director's cut. Go ahead, Kyle.
This is, in my opinion, one of Kevin Costner's top 3 films. It's intense. It's got a heat to it outside of even the chemistry between him and Stowe. There's just something about this movie that is so good. And Madeline Stowe is absolutely gorgeous in this film. I mean,
yeah. Jeez.
Excuse me. Some people might be offended. I'm sorry. This movie probably induced puberty for some people.
She was what we call.
There's a reason why this movie was in circulation in late night Skinamax for several years too. It was that
she falls into the category as a smoke show in this movie here. Yeah. What's funny too, what's interesting is like the IMDb elevator pitch, as Lacey refers to it, about the falls in love with the wife of a powerful businessman. That's Anthony Quinn. Now he's straight up a cartel leader. Let's just put it that way right now. And what James Gannon I love in this film, he's the old cowboy guy that he becomes friends with after he survives from being left for dead. And then you get a young drawing a blank here.
Ellie Kirkland?
No, a young what's his name? Sergeant Bob Hoskins with Mario Brothers. John Leguizamo. John Leguizamo, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
As he's kind of working his way back to get revenge. Those actually were my favorite scenes, to be honest with you, other than the sex scene in the Jeep while it was moving. Some really good. I got to tell you, too, Tony Scott, one of my favorite directors of all time. I'm trying to remember a Tony Scott film I didn't like. Rest in peace, Tony Scott.
Yeah,
I can almost make the argument that I like him better than his brother Ridley, to be honest with you. Tony Scott has made some fantastic films, and I love the way that he frames scenes. Lacey, your thoughts on Revenge?
If you get a chance, listen to the commentary. It is very interesting, and he doesn't pull any punches. He talks all about all the things.
Oh, when you say he, who are you referring to?
The director.
Okay, Tony Scott.
Mr. Scott, yes. But my favorite, I think my favorite thing about it is that he calls John Leguizamo, he calls him Johnny Legs.
Johnny Legs.
Which is adorable. And now I can't think of him as anything else but Johnny Legs, and I don't think I'm ever gonna be able to meet John Leguizamo now, because I'm gonna be like Johnny Legs. But the film's amazing. The film's very well done. I think that I mean, it's dark. It's definitely got some 1980s references that are important. This was before the AIDS crisis was spoken about as AIDS crisis,
right?
But that's what and the director during the commentary does say that that's how she passes away. That's what she dies from because of all the forced prostitution and heroin and the needle sharing and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And he was trying to make a statement that you couldn't make at the time. And so he just had to veil it the way he did, which is an interesting way. A lot of times people see a movie and they wait, 25 years and they start like dissecting it. Oh, like, I wonder what whatever. But he was very clear. Like, that's what that was. There you go.
Yeah, it's a tough watch. It doesn't end happy for the couple at the end. But Kevin Costner is damn good in this movie, and everyone was good. I love it. What's his name? Anthony Quinn was great as the mob cartel villain in this. It was beautifully shot. Just a really, really, really good movie. Yeah,
the big bad.
All right, next we have here, guys, is a movie called Witches, and its theatrical run made over $15 million. It looks like, Lacey, you're holding up the Blu-ray. I've got the DVD. I found the DVD, so we'll get that. And it's got a cool poster. A recently orphaned young boy is taken to a seaside hotel in England with his grandmother, who is recuperating after an illness. After staying at their hotel is a group of witches who have gathered to prepare a plot to rid England of all children. Directed by Nicholas Roeg, stars Angelica Houston, Mai Zetterling, Jason Fisher, Rowan Atkinson, and Brenda Blethyn. Kyle, give us some trivia on Witches.
Yeah, many of the witches in the meeting are men in women's clothing. It took Angelica Houston 8 hours of makeup time to transform into the Grand High Witch, and it was the last film that Jim Henson personally oversaw.
The last film that what? I'm sorry?
Jim Henson personally oversaw.
Yeah, that's right. Towards the end there. Gosh. So, Lacey, you're holding up you have the Blu-ray, right?
I do.
Yeah. Give me your thoughts on Witches.
This movie was super dumb. Like, I was so excited to see it. I love Angelica Houston. I love Rowan Atkinson. I love Brenda Blethyn. I love Jim Henson. I love all the people. I watched this and I was like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. Like, what is this? I don't understand. How did this get made? It's just this dumb premise. Like, the witches are trying to get rid of all the, I don't know. Silly movie. I'm sure that children would enjoy it.
Yeah.
But I think it has to be like, they have to be like over 5 because it's a scary movie if you're under 5, but under 10 because if you're past 10, it's like whatever.
Yeah.
I think this is a very
so
I think it has to be a cult classic or something because I just don't get it.
So are you holding on to your Blu-ray? Or are you gonna donate it or sell it?
I don't know. I mean, it might go in the collection under
dumb.
Under like first to go if I need space.
Gotcha. Kyle, what are your thoughts on Witches?
I have never watched this movie the whole way through. I've caught it on cable a couple times and I just couldn't get into it. I'll be honest with you, Angelica Houston is not a huge selling point for me.
Yeah.
A mixed bag on that. Yeah, just nah. I mean, it is unfortunately got a sad place in history with the Jim Henson connection in this. Yeah. So, I mean, this is not a movie that's just, it's there. That's about it.
I thought it was boring AF. I'll be honest with you. It was a very boring film. It seemed like most of the movie takes place in the hotel room where there's the conference with all the witches. And then when they think they're alone, the little kid spies behind the wall of all the witches showing what they really look like. And the only thing I actually liked about this film is when the kids were turned into mice. And I thought the little mice puppets were actually pretty darn cute. But other than that, Lacey, I have to agree with you. This movie's dumb. I will not rewatch it. I will be moving along from my copy of the DVD.
I feel like this movie was recently remade in a way by Netflix. There was a movie about witches in a hotel.
Yeah, Anne Hathaway was in it.
Anne Hathaway was in it. Yeah,
I never got around to seeing
that. Version. Yeah, that was a much better version than this.
Okay, yeah, I never got around to seeing that. So, okay, guys, the next one I'm excited to talk about. I'm actually playing this right now on my player here, and this is the original La Femme Nikita. Its original theatrical run made over $5 million. An urgent life or death dilemma befalls Nikita, a feral street girl and violent drug addict, after killing a police officer at point blank range. Hopeless, Nikita is given a new lease on life when she reluctantly exchanges her doomed fate for a secret government program that promises to mold her into a cold-blooded assassin under the wing of her sadistic mentor, Bob. Now, with a new set of skills, a new identity, and lethal, sophisticated looks, Nikita is the ultimate weapon and the perfect puppet for doing the government's dirty work. However, what happens if the train killer chooses love over death? Directed by Luc Besson, writer Luc Besson, starring Anne Pauliard, Marc Dorette, and Patrick Fontana. Now, as you know, guys, we not only had 2 TV shows with La Femme Nikita, and I'm going to showcase. You got the Blu-ray there too. Nice. I actually turned mine into a Blu-ray DVD double feature, just like you did. Yeah. But I do have the original DVD just because I think the cover looks really darn cool on this DVD, and I have this playing right now. And there's a making of La Femme Nikita documentary, which I don't know if it's on the other DVD that I have here. But I got an interesting story about this movie. I didn't know anything about this movie coming out, but a friend of mine who works at this, or who was volunteering at the Santa Barbara International Film Festival, which we still have, and it happens during every February, and it's going on right now as we speak, as we're recording this podcast. And this is where I saw movies like Earth Girls Are Easy. She told me about this film. You got to go check it out. And we have a bunch of theaters here in Santa Barbara where all of these movies play throughout different time zones. And we had this old theater called the Victorian Theater where a lot of plays were happening. She's like, you got to go see this movie, La Femme Nikita. I said, okay. So that was the first time that I saw La Femme Nikita. I also saw Lensman. Do you remember Lensman, Kyle?
That's a whole podcast for me right there.
Yeah. But I saw La Femme Nikita. I'm like, oh my God, who's Luc Besson? And of course, Luc Besson goes on and makes a huge name for himself as well. But that's how I saw La Femme Nikita. And I also want to mention, too, that a few years later, we get not a shot-for-shot remake, but a pretty much scene-for-scene remake with Bridget Fonda called Point of No Return, which actually is a pretty damn good version of the film as well. And I watched them back to back, and I'm like, you know what? A lot of remakes suck, but I got to tell you, the Bridget Fonda version, she was really good in it. It was pretty good, but it's not like the Psycho shot for shot remake, but it's definitely a scene for scene remake. Kyle, let's start with you on La Femme Nikita. Your thoughts?
Well, do you want me to hit a little trivia first here?
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Well, we got trivia. Go.
So before I get to my thoughts, the first scene Nikita appears in, it was the first scene Anne Pauliard shot. Despite having only one line, Luc Besson had Pauliard deliver nearly 100 takes. Pauliard later found out that he used the second take in the movie. Great.
Takes, Jesus.
Luc Besson had Anne Pauliard train extensively with guns so that she would be completely at ease with them. Pauliard took to practicing loading and unloading a fake gun in her car, which led to her being pulled over by the police and having their guns drawn on her in traffic one day as they thought her weapon was real.
Jesus.
You also mentioned it, Bridget Fonda, who starred in the remake Point of No Return, would later work with Luc Besson and Techi Cairo in Kiss of the Dragon. Now, as far as this movie goes, this is the movie of February. This is the movie that is a change Hollywood movie, and it created a whole new genre that Hollywood kind of never capitalized on.
The female assassin?
We had Sigourney Weaver in Aliens. We had Linda Hamilton in Terminator. But this is the one where really you had the badass super killer. And this film has been remade and done in so many different ways since then, and it established a whole genre. It brought Luc Besson to prominence. This is the movie this month that really will always have a mark in Hollywood history. To this day, this film is considered a cult classic, even though it's probably become more mainstream. But there was a time when you could never rent this movie because it was always checked out.
Yeah,
and
it was tough to find.
Sounds on HBO or other cable channels until much, much later. So it was a lot of people, word of mouth, you just couldn't see it because you couldn't find it to rent. And
my wife actually prefers the Point of No Return version. What are your thoughts on the remake, Kyle?
I love Point of No Return. I'm a huge Bridget Fonda fan, so I was all in when that came came out, and I think it's right on par with the original source material of La Femme Nikita. I think they did a fantastic job with it, and Bridget Fonda I think was phenomenal in it. But yeah, I mean this is a Hollywood changing movie without a doubt.
Yeah. Lacey, what are your thoughts on La Femme Nikita?
Okay, I very much enjoyed La Femme Nikita. I will say that her name is Anne Pariot. That's how it's pronounced.
Yes.
Just so that we can give you that. Also, it's Checky Cario is the guy.
That's how you say his name.
Yeah.
Okay, I always wonder about that because he's one of those guys, but I could never say his name.
Right?
It's like Worcestershire sauce.
Right?
I can never say his name.
But yeah, I think it's amazing. I think I enjoy this one more than the Point of No Return version, but I think it's also because I don't have to listen to I don't have to watch the subtitles because I speak French.
Yep.
So I think
Peter. Cheater.
With action films, you want to watch the action. You don't want to be going away from the action to read the subtitles. And I think that kind of, especially for people who don't like subtitles or maybe just don't want to deal with foreign films in general, whatever. I think that can cause people to be like, maybe. I will say that Point of No Return did change my mind about Bridget Fonda because I could not stand Bridget Fonda until I saw this movie. And
Was there something you saw her in that you didn't like her in?
Something I can't remember what it was that I saw her, but I was just like, ugh. Like she, okay. I honestly don't. I can't remember what it was, but then I remember going back after the fact and rewatching Doc Hollywood.
Yeah,
and
she had a pretty good '90s run as well.
Yeah.
She just dropped off the radar.
Yeah, I don't know, but I watched the Point of No Return. I very much enjoyed it. I had to be dragged to the theater. I was like, no, I hate her, ew. And I was dragged to the theater, and then I loved it. I was like, okay, you've changed my mind.
I'm kind of surprised Anne, not going to say her name because I'm going to butcher it again. She didn't become a bigger star. I mean, this movie was a great launching point because it hit over here in the States.
Mm-hmm.
I know she did other stuff in France and other stuff, but I'm really surprised why she didn't kind of make the jump. So kind of curious about that. So yeah. All right. Okay, guys. The next film we have here is Angel Town. What you got there? Is that the Blu-ray?
Yes.
Nice. Okay. So what's funny too is our friend Adam O'Brien had talked about Angel Town on his Lethal Mullet as well, and so I ended up finding it, I think, streaming on Tubi for free. I ended up watching towards the end of last year because I kind of came across it. Just made under $1 million theatrically, starring Olivier Grunier. Is that how you say his name?
Olivier Grunier.
Olivier Grunier. Angel Town. And the poster says he's justice. His justice is one-on-one. A graduate student and martial arts expert rents a room in a house owned by a single mother who lives there with her son. A local street gang is trying to recruit the son, but the new tenant tries to help the boy's mother keep him out of the gang. And when they learn of this, they target both the mother and her new tenant. Stars Olivier, Peter Kwan, and Teresa Saldana. Kyle, give us some trivia on Angel Town.
You talk about sliding doors. This was the feature film debut of actor Olivier Grunier. The producers developed the film originally as a possible Jean-Claude Van Damme vehicle. Yeah. I have a feeling this movie would have been quite different and more successful had it been Jean-Claude. The film's first weekend of theatrical release was marked by a gang brawl at a drive-in theater in Westminster, California. A sequel was planned but never materialized. In some parts of Europe, the 1992 film Juice was released as Angel Town 2, but it remains unknown whether that film started off as the intended sequel or not.
I thought this movie was okay. I felt they were trying to make Olivier into a thing, and it didn't quite happen. I know he did some other little actioneers and stuff like that. I actually like him. I think he's got some. I'll tell you though, this is a 90s film, but this is an 80s film. Especially when you look at what he's wearing, what everyone's wearing. And I swear I felt like I've been to those filming locations unintentionally. I've been in that area where this movie was filmed. It was very of its time with the type of gangs that was happening there. I'm not surprised there was a gang brawl at a drive-in showing of this at all. But yeah, it definitely feels very, very 80s. It was okay. It's not great in my opinion. But Lacey, you have the physical media copy of there. What is your take on Angel
Yes.
Town?
Okay, so this is a Blu-ray. This is an MVD Blu-ray. Again, it's a boutique Blu-ray. It's got the slip cover that has like the fake stickers that look like it's an old DVD or Blu-ray copy or a VHS copy.
Nice, I love that.
It comes with a little poster, a little 4-fold poster, which is cool. Okay, so that being said, as far as the fun of the Blu-ray itself, it's a very stark Blu-ray. It's
Gotcha. Okay.
That's it.
What is your thoughts on the movie? Did it do
The
anything
film
for you?
itself, I thought was okay. Okay, but the commentary made it so much more interesting that I went back and watched this again after the commentary. They actually filmed in the areas where these gangs were, and they hired gang members to like they paid gang members protection, like by the block.
That was a very common practice back in the day, and still is, I think. Yeah.
But it was really interesting. And now the guy, Olivier Gruner, he was at the time a world champion. He held the black belt or the world belt like for 2 years running, which is why he said, "Well, I want to get into movies." And there's a bunch of fun interviews on this Blu-ray. So if you get a chance, watch the Blu-ray, listen to the commentary. Very interesting. The director takes himself very seriously, but I think it's just, I don't think it's because of the movie. I think it's because he was trying to be very respectful in the conversation about talking about gang members. Of course, no names or anything like that, but he was very clear that like there were Crip areas and blood areas, and there was another one I can't remember. Like there's, it was an interesting, interesting way to do it. And he did, like, all the background people were actually hired gang members, and they were paid well above what normal extras are paid.
I feel like Olivier's most known film, and I remember seeing it in the theater, was Nemesis. That came out a couple of years later in '92, kind of a sci-fi thriller. And Adam again has talked and covered it on. And I recently found that on DVD. I'm going to rewatch that, but I think that was kind of his biggest film. Kyle, your thoughts on Angel Town?
Like you said, it's a 80s movie that came out in 1990. It's very obvious. You even look at Olivier Gruner, and I mean, he kind of looks a little like Jean-Claude at that point. And I think, this was okay. We planned this for Jean-Claude. We can't get Jean-Claude who's got some skills and that we can kind of still have that look and maybe make something out of him. And I think that's what they kind of hoped, and it just didn't take off. So it's got this little spot there. You look at his IMDb, he really never, most of his stuff is direct to video or B movie thing. So it's just kind of was one of those movies again, Dumpuary.
The person that I liked in this film, and we actually talked about her, was Teresa Saldana, guys. She was in the movie that we talked about last year when we were covering the year of 1984 in the Charles Bronson film, The Evil That Men Do. And remember, she was attacked by a crazy fan and stabbed several times. Remember that? And this was The Evil That Men Do was kind of like the movie she did to get back into it. And she also like did a movie where she played herself about the recounting of that horrible event. But I love her. I thought she was actually good in this one. She's my favorite part of the film there. So yeah. Okay, the next film. Oh yes, Lacey.
I was gonna say, and no relation to Zoe.
No,
they were clear as that on all the interviews and stuff.
Gotcha.
That's like a question she gets a lot.
Gotcha. The next film we have has two names, and we've been through this a lot here. This is The Blood of Heroes, or AKA The Salute of the Jugger. Original theatrical release was under $1 million, but $882,000. It's an action film starring Rutger Hauer and Joan Chen. Also has Delroy Lindo and Vincent D'Onofrio. In the future, where most of mankind and technology is wiped out, a post-apocalyptic world provides a backdrop for a brutal, futuristic game resembling football. Rutger Hauer plays a disgraced former star, leading a ragtag group of Juggers to one of the remaining 9 cities for glory and redemption. Now, Kyle, go ahead and do the trivia, but I want to start off with something after you do regarding this.
Well, as you mentioned, it had two different names, known as Blood of Heroes in the U.S., but this movie was released internationally as Salute of the Jugger. A moderate hit on its theatrical release, the film did extremely well on its video rental and pay-per-view debut a few months later. According to Rutger Hauer's autobiography, during a break in filming, he took a motorcycle ride in the outback. He ended up following a kangaroo for a bit, then found himself lost in the desert. After a bit of tension, he finally pointed his bike in the right direction and made it back to the set. The sport of Jugger has gained a following in the decades since the film's release, and as of 2023 is an international sport with various leagues, rules, and competitions. It is particularly popular at Wasteland Weekend, an event for celebrating post-apocalyptic stories and aesthetics.
Wasteland Weekend, I forget where it is, but it's in the States. I don't know if it's in Arizona or something like that, but you get a lot of people dressing up like Mad Max extras or Mad Max or Humongous, and it's one of those things. Yeah, it's kind of like Burning Man, but for post-apocalyptic type themes and stuff, and I'm not surprised. But I do have the American version here, Blu-ray, or excuse me, DVD, just like you do, Lacey, and then I picked up the Australian version, which I think actually has a better cover with the two arms, fighting it out, called Salute of the Jugger. Now, I just want to start off by saying I've been hearing about this film for years from two wonderful people. First of all, my lovely wife, Erin, Australian, our good friend for a very long time and huge contributor of the network because he hosts Lethal Mullet, Adam O'Brien, Australian, because this movie is filmed in Australia and has a very long history and is revered by Australians for several reasons. And so I ended up picking up these things. And I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm going to wait till later to watch them. And then we were going to do 1990 Cal. I'm like, perfect. I got the time to read them. I know Adam has covered this on Lethal Mullet. And my wife was like, okay, have you watched it yet? Have you watched it yet? It's like, well, I'm going to watch it next month because we're going to talk about it during February. She's like, okay. So I really want to know what you think. So I finally watched it. And she's in Australia right now. And so we get on talking on video here, like we are here on StreamYard. She's like, so what'd you think? I'm like, yeah, not so good. Sorry. She's like, what? And she goes on to tell me like this was just like on all the time. And she and her friends used to watch this all the time. I know Adam used to watch this all the time. I think it has a much bigger following in Australia. I thought it was a boring slog of a film. I nodded out several times. It took me 3 nights to watch this damn movie. And Lacey, when you were trying to watch it yesterday, you sent me a couple of texts.
I haven't pulled up.
What's
that? I haven't pulled up. Y'all,
Okay.
I'm struggling with this Blood of Thieves movie. I'm 30 minutes in and nothing has happened. It's like a murder lacrosse training camp montage. It's so boring.
I like how you said Blood of Thieves instead of Bloody Heroes.
Whatever it was. And then you said that your wife loves it. And I was like, she can have it. I wonder what she finds appealing about it. Genuinely cannot figure it out. No clue. Oh my God. Oh God.
I don't get it. I just don't get it. This movie sucked.
It was so bad. It was so bad. Like
It's a very bad movie, but what's funny about this, there was a period for about 6 months where this movie kind of got a really weird cult following thanks to a certain musical act called the Insane Clown Posse, because they had juggalos. And when people learned that the name of this movie was Jugger, they thought it was associated with that. And this movie had like this really weird spike for like 6 months because of that. And when they figured out what it really was, but yet there's aspects of this movie that fit in with the whole Insane Clown Posse motif to a T.
okay.
So Kyle, you've seen it obviously, right?
I have. Let me put it this way: I've seen parts of it because, much like you guys, I could not get through this movie. This movie was just. It's one of those ones that's a cure for insomnia. I'm just gonna say it.
So
sorry, Aaron. I love you, but
still
sorry.
I'm still gonna hold on to this movie because I feel like if I don't, my wife might say something about
it. There might be divorce papers, Kevin.
But I gotta say though, I like the Salute of the Jugger. I think that's actually a better name, and I love the picture. I think it's pretty cool. But yeah, it's just weird. It's Delroy Lindo and Vincent D'Onofrio in it.
Yes,
but it was so funny.
Cast.
Yeah, what's funny too though is I actually did a little double feature with Bloody Heroes. because I watched Wedlock, which came out a couple of years later, that also starred Rutger Hauer and Joan Chen, where they had to wear they got stuck in prison and they had to wear the explosive collars like they did in the what was it Running Man. I actually thought that was a better film personally, but yeah. Tough watch, man.
So here's my question. I'm going to a convention in April, and D'Onofrio is slated to be there. I think I'm not going to take this with me.
I think that's a good call.
I think I'm going to have him sign Adventures in Babysitting instead.
Better call. Better call.
Yep, much better
well
call.
said.
Yep.
All right, moving on. The next one we have here is a fun film that really, really surprised me, guys. I was curious about this. This is a musical called Rockula. In the theater, didn't do too well. Made $99,000. The poster says he's a vampire who hasn't scored in 400 years. Tonight's the night he keeps a date with fate. A young vampire cannot lose his virginity because of a curse imposed on him centuries ago. Rockula is about a male vampire who lost his lady love centuries ago. She was killed by a pirate with a rhinestone peg leg wielding a large ham bone. Our hero, the vampire, did nothing to save her. So now he is cursed to watch her be born again in another life, then watch her die. Strangely enough, by a pirate with a rhinestone peg leg wielding a you know what. Now in 1990, he suspects his last chance to try to save her instead of watching get clubbed over and over again through the years. Oh, and he becomes a rock star in the process. This stars Dean Cameron, Tony Basil, Thomas Dolby, Bo Diddley, Tawny Fair Ellis. Kyle, give us some trivia on Rockula.
Stanley Thomas Dolby and his date arrive at Club Hell, in which very much looks like the original Munster coach. This film was the second feature by cinematographer John Schwartzman, half-brother to Jason Schwartzman, stepson of Talia Shire, and nephew of Francis Ford Coppola, all related to Kevin Bacon in some way, because Kevin Bacon here, who'd later go on to earn an Oscar nomination for work on major films such as Jurassic World, The Amazing Spider-Man, The Rock, and Seabiscuit. Principal filming for Rockula was actually completed in 1988. At the time, both New World and Canon Pictures were filing for bankruptcy. Consequently, several of the films that the two companies made, which were ready for release, got shelved. The films made by New World eventually found decent distribution, and their film Warlock actually wound up being a huge hit on home video. Canon's Rockula, however, only played in a few theaters before getting dumped on video in August 1990, where it remained largely ignored.
Okay, so Lacey, I'm a little jealous of you because when I was trying to find the Blu-ray copy of this release, it's out of print. It was going for like $100. But I did find it on Laserdisc, and I have it on Laserdisc. But it is streaming online for free. I had to get the Laserdisc. I thought it was so cool. You were able to get that copy at a decent price with a little shenanigans, not shenanigans, but
bartering, not bartering.
Bartering. Yes. So you were able
purchase. Yeah. I found someone on eBay who was selling several different items, and I said, if I buy a bunch of them, can you give me a price on a deal on the price?
So I just got to say, I'm a fan of Dean Cameron. Of course, a lot of people remember him, of course, from Summer School. He's done, I think he did a ski movie, and he's just a funny guy. I'm surprised he didn't get bigger, but I was really pleasantly surprised and had fun with Rockula. What is your thoughts, Lacey?
I loved it. It's super fun. I mean, I remember seeing this as a kid, or teen, I guess. I saw it a bunch of times. I don't know if it was on HBO or whatever channel, but or it could have just been on VHS.
Thomas Dolby is the bad guy right here.
Yep. Great. Here's something that you do. Does that have a commentary?
I didn't listen to it. If it did, I don't think it does because you have the Blu-ray, right? Which means it was released on Blu-ray and probably included a new commentary, maybe.
Right. Well, it says new audio commentary, but I didn't know how new the Laserdisc was. So because the picture's the same.
Yeah.
So interesting little thing though. This is one of those ones that has the double-sided, right?
Right.
So this is the other side where you.
Where he looks like he's dressed up as a vampire Elvis.
Elvis, yeah. So I will say that the commentary is very interesting. It's really fun. The car is in fact the Munsters car, and is owned by the director now.
Nice.
So also there's several interviews with Dean Cameron and several other people. The director's name is Luca Bercovici, I think is how you pronounce it. Super fun, super silly. I would say this would go in a good. This I feel like this would be a good double feature with Once Bitten.
Yeah, or maybe even Rocky Horror, maybe.
Maybe, or like maybe My Best Friend is a Vampire.
Okay, yeah. By the way, I'm looking. I don't know if your Blu-ray has it, but if you look at the, what does that say right there? It says Canon Video.
Canon Video. Yep.
Are we sure this isn't going to be a couch potato theater later, Kevin?
We could couch potato that. There's a lot of information on this that we could hash through. There's a lot of fun stuff.
Well, Kyle, have you seen this film?
In shorts is hilarious.
I saw this movie it was a rental. It was a rental back in the days when on VHS, and it was rented because of the Dean Cameron of it all. Because like you, Kevin, I am a big Dean Cameron fan. I think he's highly underrated. I think everything I've ever seen him in, I have found him funny and entertaining.
Yeah.
This movie is insane. Let's just not even pretend. There are probably many people who have watched this while being inebriated on something. I'm just going to leave it at that, and probably have a whole different perspective on this movie because of it. But no, it's unique. It's funny. It's insane. Is it something you're going to revisit a bunch of times? No. But if you're looking for something that's off the wall and something different, and you come across this, you got to check it out. And like I said, I'll give Dean Cameron will always get my time.
I will say this though, that Lacey, I'm jealous that you got the Blu-ray. That is so cool.
Well, if I find another one at a good price, I'll let you know.
Yeah. This movie surprised me, and it was definitely a lot of fun. I didn't know anything about this movie until I was doing the notes for the show and going through the night. I had never heard of it. I didn't remember it at all. But I did find it. What's funny too, the Laserdisc. I think I got the Laserdisc for like $20. I'm like, that's worth having. What's funny is the original sticker on here. It was selling for $59.
Wow. Well, okay, and I feel like we do need to mention the fact that Toni Basil, the woman who plays his mother, her claim to fame is that she sang the song Mickey.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, Mickey, you're so fine. Like, if anybody who's a cheerleader or who's ever known a cheerleader or who's ever gone to a high school football game knows Mickey.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Yep. All right. The next one we have here, guys, is the last one on the list here. This is and I listed this as this is actually a TV movie that came out February 25th, but it's important for several reasons. So this came out February 25th. This is Challenger the movie. Challenger, a made-for-television docudrama about the tragic events of the Space Shuttle Challenger disaster on January 28th, 1986. On January 20, 1986, and it was broadcast on ABC. Its production is somewhat controversial as the families of the astronauts generally objected to it. And this, of course, is about it centers around the New Hampshire teacher, Krista McAuliffe, who joined 6 other astronauts on the tragic 1986 space shuttle flight. Directed by Glenn Jordan, stars Karen Allen as Krista, Barry Bostwick, and Julie Fulton. I didn't really have any trivia on this, Kyle, that I could find, but I did want to include this. Now, Lacey, you're holding up your DVD here. It's yours is a little bit different than mine. I've noticed, actually. What's interesting there, you can't tell, but in the clouds here, you actually see in mine, if you can get a little bit closer, you can actually see the cast.
Oh, wow. Okay.
There as well. What's funny is I've seen yours on eBay. These aren't cheap to find. Do you remember how you got yours?
Yeah, I remembered seeing it. It wasn't a movie, it was a mini series. I remember it was like 3 nights in a row or something. I remember watching it on like over a couple of days on TV. or maybe
Yeah, this movie was 140 minutes. So yeah, I think it was like a 2-night miniseries thing or something, and then the DVDs
something.
put it all together and stuff. So
yeah, so I remember watching it, and then when we got ready to do this, oh yeah, look, it actually says miniseries on the thing. I just noticed that. So I ordered mine, and I got the PAL version. So I have to see if it's going to play on my.
So you haven't watched it yet?
No, I mean I saw it back in the day.
Gotcha.
I haven't seen it recently because I was gonna watch this, and then when I got it, I tried it in my DVD player upstairs, Blu-ray player upstairs, and it did not function. I was like, oh, it's a PAL version, PAL. So this is like a region 2, I guess.
Well, here, let me tell you something real quick. I scanned this thing on eBay. The one that I have is going for $75.
Oh, dang.
The one that you have is going for $44 right now on eBay.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Huh. Both buy it nows, by the way. So I found this at a thrift store for like a couple bucks. Got lucky with it. Yeah.
This one was Amazon. I got it from a third party seller, and it was like $12 or something.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm a huge fan of Karen Allen anyway, and I thought she did a great job portraying Kristen McAuliffe in this. And I think the whole cast that they got to play the crew that unfortunately perished in this disaster did a really good job. They each kind of highlighted them a little bit. Barry Bostwick, of course, was the commander. I got to tell you though, Kyle, hearing him talk about the technical stuff, I was getting some Ace Hunter vibes. I'll tell you right now, man, when he was doing it, from Megaforce. But I thought they did a really good job. And if you're thinking you're going to watch this and actually see the destruction, you're not going to. It ends right before they take off, which I thought was a nice thing to do. We know what happens. But it was more about Krista and her getting the opportunity to do it. And I thought Karen Allen did a great job with it. I don't remember watching this when it originally came out, but I thought I could see why the family members would not be into this. I get it. But as someone who doesn't know the family members, I thought it was done really, really well. And I actually thought it was a good tribute to the cast. So if you get a chance, check it out, Lisa. I'd like to know what you think later because these aren't cheap to get anymore. So, Kyle, do you remember this movie?
Yeah, I actually remember watching this on TV when it first hit because I'm a big fan of the space program, and I remember this so drastically. They did it at a time where I think they felt like, okay, we're in a new decade. We can pay tribute to this in a proper way and do this film. And it was very well acted. Obviously, you have Karen Allen, Barry Bostwick, and like you said, Kevin, they cut it off before the tragedy actually happens. They really make it a tribute to Kristen McAuliffe and the crew, and it's powerful. And if you lived through that time, it can be a hard watch because of
well, we were all in school watching this live because a teacher was going up into space. So that's why it was so traumatizing because we were all watching it live.
Yep.
That was one of the things for me. I was living in Alaska at the time. Shuttle launches were still really, really early in the morning before school. So it was one of those things when we went into school, everybody, we were having discussions about it, but it's just, it's when they do things like this isn't like The Day After or things like that where we covered earlier where that still was heavy. This is real. This was real life, and this is one of the greatest tragedies in U.S. history. To be honest with you,
it is.
And we've lost other shuttles since then, but this one was just.
I think it was streaming somewhere online. I had trouble finding it, to be honest with you. I can't say for sure if it was. It's a tough find. I got lucky. I found it on DVD. But if you do get your hands on it, I would definitely watch it because the performances by the crew by the cast portraying the crew was really good. I thought. I don't know how realistic it was leading up to it. I don't know how all the guys came together, but it was believable to me just because the performances of the character and the way characters and the way it was done. So yeah. All right, guys. Well, we are rounding things out here. This has been Time Warp 1990, February, the movies and pop culture. But I've got a big question for you guys. Okay, so we're doing this with the 1990 movies because these movies were released in 1990, but filmed in 1989 or earlier. So I want to ask you guys, which of these films felt like an 80s film and which of these felt like a 90s, if any? Who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
Okay, Kyle, what you got?
So I think the majority of these honestly felt more like 80s films. I think these were, I think for the most part, across the board, they felt more like 80s films. The only couple that maybe felt more 90s, obviously La Femme Nikita. I think La Femme Nikita
definitely
doesn't come out in the 80s if it happens.
Yeah.
And you know what? I think Heart Condition is actually a movie that probably plays a little bit more 90s than it does 80s. It's right there, borderline, but I think the subject matter hits a little different in the 90s than it does in the 80s. I don't know if the subject matter carries like it would have in the 80s.
Yeah, I could debate that, but you got a point. I could say it could go either way. I thought you were going to say the movie that felt 90s for me was Revenge. That felt like a early 90s film there.
That's another one.
Which is weird because it takes place in like the desert and there's nothing to connect it to the 90s.
What are you talking about?
Feel of
Revenge, yeah. Well, it's in Mexico, so yeah. Hard to Kill could pass as a 90s film, definitely. By the way, Loose Cannons definitely dated itself because Gene Hackman makes a joke about sex in the 80s. So that was kind of funny too. Flashback definitely felt late 80s to me. What about you, Lacey? China O'Brien also felt 80s to me as well. Was there any that felt very 80s or 90s to you?
I think I feel like Nightbreed kind of has that 80s kind of cult status.
Yeah.
I think La Femme Nikita can go either direction, just based on, when it comes to film, usually France is about 4 or 5 years behind on how they they pick things up. They do sex, not violence. We do violence, not sex. That's kind of the difference between films and rating systems over there. So I feel like this could kind of go either way because this has a significant chunk of violence in it. The rest of them really, for me, were, let's face it, Madhouse is the 80th of 80s.
Yeah. Rockula too, because actually it was filmed in like 88 and got shelved for a while. So yeah.
But with Madhouse, you had the two biggest names in like comedy, like Kyle was saying earlier. It's like between Cheers and Night Court, this is the king and queen of late night.
That's 80s town right there for you. Yeah,
right?
Definitely.
I do think that I think Blood of Heroes probably belongs in the trash.
The trash 80s. Yeah. All right.
Whatever.
Well, let's look forward here, guys. We, of course, are covering Time Warp, the movies of 1990. And next month, we got some interesting ones here. This is March. March is kind of a banger month, I'll be honest with you. We had Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Pretty Woman, The Hunt for Red October, Blue Steel, Joe versus the Volcano, and House Party, to name a few. But we also got some other ones, too. We got Bad Influence. We got Blind Fury. We got 2 Lambada dances. We'll get to that. Lord of the Flies, The Ambulance, Fourth War, Opportunity Knock, Side Out, the volleyball movie. Guys,
love Side Out. Side Out. Side Out. I love Side Out.
We'll talk about that. I saw that in the theater, and we had some interesting TV shows as well. So, but let's go ahead and wrap things up here. This is the Fandom Podcast Network, and we are also on Blue Sky. You can follow us, of course, on Facebook. You can follow us on X. You can follow us on Instagram. Also, check us out on email at fandompodcastnetwork@gmail.com. My name is Kevin. I'm on X, Instagram, Threads, Discord, and Letterboxd at Spartan_Phoenix, and on Blue Sky at Spartan Phoenix. Kyle, how can we find you?
You can find me in all kinds of places, of course, all over the Fandom Podcast Network, on any of our Facebook pages. You can find me on Twitter at @KyleW. You can find me on Blue Sky at @KyleW. You can find me on Instagram and Threads at @KyleFandom.
Awesome. Lacey, where can we find you?
These days I am doing Blue Sky and Letterboxd and Discord. I am
Okay.
Lacy Pants in those two
Awesome.
places.
Also, please check us out on your iTunes catchers like Apple Podcasts and such. And if you can leave us a feedback, we would really appreciate it. And also support us on TeePublic. We got Time Warp t-shirt like I'm wearing right here. We got logos for all of our shows on the network. And if you purchase anything under the Fandom Podcast Network label, we get a little kickback. We appreciate that support there. So make sure you check us out there. A lot of stuff from t-shirts to hats to cups to pillows, you name it, you can find it there. This is Time Warp, the Fandom Flashback show. This has been February 1990. So, guys, thank you again so much. Kyle, thank you very much.
Always a pleasure. It's good fun doing the 90s. And it's interesting to look at the history and the difference. And this is going to be fun throughout. And next month we got, like you said, there's some bangers next month.
Yes, there is. Lacy, again, the queen of movie food. Thank you so much.
Having a blast. It was good.
All right, guys. Well, until next time, we will see you back in time.